When we were young, we read more often because we had to. It was the only way for us to get knowledge and to be enlightened. Read to your heart's delight and be enlightened. Let's just read. It's a podcast by Andy's Personal Development. Stay tuned for more reading and enlightenment. Hi, and welcome to this edition of Let's Just Read. Our guest, Asha Nyr, is in the house, and this episode is entitled Raw Fantasy, Romance, Fiction, and that is pertaining to the genre. She says the first book series in her series of fiction book, The Mystic and the Lycan King, she did not intend to publish. She went on in kit to write for exposure therapy. As a childhood assault survivor, she ended up carrying a lot of trauma with her, and it built up over time. So, she wrote for the first time a year and a half ago and found relief there. And readers came flooding in because family and friends encouraged her to publish. It was shocking but deeply welcome. And that's how she got here. So, without further ado, let's welcome our guest, Asha Nyr, live on Let's Just Read. Welcome, Asha. How are you?
Good. Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. And thank you for asking. And it's good to see you here. We appreciate you being here and taking the time to spend with us on this podcast. So, Asha, tell us a bit about your personal journey up to the point that you actually decide, I'm going to write because I'm being encouraged to so do. And eventually you got published.
Yeah, it was a long journey to get here. I have been in therapy for treating my trauma for
Mm-hmm.
years.
Yeah.
And at some point with dialectic behavioral therapy, I learned about exposure therapy, which is where you slowly expose yourself to uh, things that that traumatized you. So let's
Mm-hmm.
say if you're afraid of dogs, you would go to a dog that you knew was safe, that was leashed. And over time, you would introduce yourself, get a little closer to the dog, maybe eventually let it, smell you, sniff your hand. And eventually, over time, you start to be able to reprogram your brain and realize not all dogs are going to hurt me. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and it's evidence based over time. So when I learned about that, I really thought about how I could apply it. I couldn't figure out how to apply it until I tried something new, which was writing.
Okay.
Um, I had to work on myself through characters in order to approach these very difficult topics, very sensitive and heavy topics. I had to
Mm-hmm.
put it in fantasy to push it to a safe distance. If it was at a modern time, I wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah.
Had to be fantasy, had to have instances of having more beast like feelings and emotions with the intensity to be able to process it in a way that is a little bit more understandable. So I tried it. I did it on Inket, like you said, because I didn't want to go through it alone. And
Mm-hmm.
that's how it all started.
Wow. I love that. Thank you for sharing and being vulnerable and open with us. And so the writing has been a great sense of therapy for you. Is that my understanding?
Yes, yes. I've also learned so much about myself and also have been able to kind of pin down where vulnerabilities are by putting my characters in different situations. I never really know where a story is going to take me. I don't plan it out very much. I just kind of go from beginning to end.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, that's how it uh, ha- perf- has its effect on me.
Okay, wonderful. So tell us about this publication. It's a strange name. How did you arrive at the name for the publication?
Um, I wanted to represent both characters in the title. I mean, the male protagonist is like a werewolf. So he's the Lycan King, the king of all the werewolves. And all of the, in my series, all of the female protagonists, their names are almost not quite derogatory on the title, but in the story, she was the mistake. And so it,
Hmm.
with the title, you're starting at the very beginning where
Yeah.
it's a struggle where we're not sure who we are, as protagonists. And it's not until you get to the end where you're at the triumph. So that's where the title comes from.
Okay, great. And the artwork, who was responsible for the artwork?
Debbie from
Oh,
Jet Launch Publishing. She is amazing. I get nothing but compliments. We're on book 4 now, and we're still getting compliments for all of the covers. But yes, I sing her praises constantly. I send her screenshots of everyone complimenting the artwork. And yeah, she's just phenomenal. No AI. So this is
uh-huh.
all properly licensed, not computer generated. So everyone gets paid and everyone, yeah, done right.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. And how does it feel now that you have gotten those stories out and it is published and it's out there? What's the emotional release like for you? Ah,
I
I can hear that.
it it was obviously vulnerable at first. Um,
Hmm.
it put me in a vulnerable spot, and that's why I originally was anonymous and I didn't show my face, and I only until recently did I come out. Um, it has been validating and less scary over time as I become used to sharing these things, especially knowing the effect these stories have had on other people and other survivors sharing their experiences. And shockingly, how this book helped them come to terms with what happened to them or help them learn or find their own healing. So I have been getting as much as I'm discovering I've been giving with these novels. So though it is, I do feel vulnerable right now. Um, it has 100% been worth facing the fears
Wow.
of coming
Yeah,
out.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I hear you. I hear you. And we support you 110%. Not a problem. It's the Mystic and the Lycan King. So I'm just putting it out there so that folks can see and they can have a clear understanding of how important these stories are to you. So, what is the touching feedbacks that you are getting? You said you are getting good feedbacks from people who are survivors themselves and they can align and resonate with your story. Anything specific that comes to mind when you think about the feedback that has given you that sense of comfort as well?
Just hearing how heartbreaking it is to have people who can relate to these
Hmm.
stories and to,
Yeah.
I think what really moves me the most is them knowing exactly what I'm talking about, which always
Yeah.
surprises me. Like the ghost hands,
Hmm.
which is the feeling of someone touching you without anyone actually being there, not knowing how it's triggered, dealing with it.
Hmm.
Like when you go to the grocery store and you immediately get a sense of discomfort. And there are people that have
Yeah.
mentioned, I get that too. I didn't even really think about it. I just experienced it. So it's kind of putting into
Mm.
words and hearing other people saying that it being put into words, that I don't know. I just feel connected to
All right.
these readers and
Hmm.
just the understanding really just brings us closer together, more like a family than just readers and fans.
Yeah. So you feel like it's beyond the fan club norm. It is more like a community with a family style environment and atmosphere that is being built.
Yes, and we are constantly supporting each other. You know, touching on certain things happening in other people's lives. I often offer to share tools that I've learned in therapy and DBT, and we refer to ourselves as a pack at this point. Kind of like a
Okay.
wolf pack.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, we are very much like a family at this point.
Wonderful. That's good. And that sounds hopeful and that sounds positive. Thanks for sharing, Asha. What about live settings? Have you been able to do live book talks and actually let people see your raw emotions as you align yourself with the story and they too begin to share that same sentiment, that same value, but just hearing it from you making a whole lot of difference?
Oh, I have barely gotten into book talk. It's a
Uh,
place that is pretty hard to get traction in, and I'm
okay.
fairly unknown at this point, being new.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this is only my third video interview, so it's still very new to me, very nerve-wracking. Um, but no, not really, not yet.
Yeah. Actually, you're doing quite fine. You just need to take a couple deep breaths and relax, and all is okay. Yeah. Just a couple deep breaths, and you're good to go. It's not about the atmosphere, it's not about the camera, it's just about you being yourself, being for real, and staying in the moment. Everything else is just life happening. That's all there is to it.
Thank
So, what challenges, if any, did you face in terms of putting the information together, deciding which chapter comes first and which one comes second? And was it challenging for you, or was it an easy flow?
What was easy about it was picking out certain elements of my trauma that I wanted to address. And I would go into a book
Right.
with a couple scenes in my head that I really wanted to happen and
Mm-hmm.
elements of the characters that I needed to represent certain aspects of my struggles. So I would have kind of a plot idea, and then I would just go from beginning to end. I would not know how the story would end. I kind of have an inkling of how I wanted it to end, but I am occasionally as unknowing about the next chapter as my readers are. So it's basically I'm finding out how to deal with the situations I put my characters in. So,
Yeah.
but part of my writing process is as I go to sleep at night, I kind of think about where I want to go next. So I don't really struggle that much with writer's block. It's just
Mm-hmm.
it at this point it just kind of flows very naturally because
Yeah.
I need to do it. It's
Okay.
therapy for me.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing, Asha. And is there any particular chapter that stands out for you that you can really resonate with? It's more closer to home with regards to your story?
Yes, my media coach really wanted me to share a quote from book two. Could I do that?
Sure.
Just an
Yeah, of
example.
course.
Uh,
Definitely.
The protagonist is a liberated slave, and
Mm-hmm.
as a slave, she was forced to do things that were traumatizing that lingered with her after leaving, dealing with ghost hands and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
the person in charge of doing these den raids and freeing of these slaves, he comes from an educated background and he represents the source of therapy. So he is educating her on certain things. And at the same time, I'm learning about these things and doing my research. So I thought about how often does the skin renew? Because it something occurred to me. I'm not sure what triggered it, but I looked it up and I discovered that around our age, because it depends on how old you are,
Yeah.
skin renews approximately, replaces itself at the rate of once a month. And he
Okay.
shares this information with her, and he asks her, "Do you know what this means?" She says, no. And he says, that
Mm-hmm.
means that in 1 month, your skin will have never known an unwanted touch.
Wow. 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 That's deep. That's deep. I'm touched. I'm
And as
touched.
I discovered
Yes.
it and I figured out a way
Yes.
to apply it, somehow it made me feel like I had a shell around me, that I had a shield, some protection.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because I have shed my skin and replaced it so many times since
Wow.
the assault and the praying. It
Mm-hmm.
was two people. So so many years have passed, and it really bolstered and kind of dimmed a bit the ghost hands that would occasionally plague me, because I knew the skin is fresh. It's never been
Yeah.
touched.
Yeah. Wonderful. That's refreshing and that's hopeful. Thank you so much, Asha. There's so much good in that. I'll remember that for a while. So I'm just going to put up something here again on the screen, and I want you to tell us about it. Let's just go around the block a little bit. This is another
This,
publication.
mhm.
Yes? Go ahead,
This is
Asha.
the latest one, book three.
Yes. Yes.
It focuses on powerlessness and
Hmm.
escaping the bubble of a warped reality.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is realizing that some of the rules I grew up with
Mm-hmm.
weren't actually healthy, or I try not to use the word normal, but I don't know any
Mm-hmm.
other way to word it. We're
All
not
right.
necessarily normal and
Yeah.
commonly practiced. When I moved out of my hometown and went to college for the first time, I saw something new, which was healthy relationships, and it shocked me. It
Mm-hmm.
basically brought me to my knees.
Yeah.
And in this book, the protagonist, Hecla, she has to move into the Fey realm, the realm of the
Mm-hmm.
fairies, and she encounters rules she does not understand.
Okay.
And the male protagonist could not protect her because he lived by these rules. He didn't know any other way to protect her than these ones that weren't as effective.
Mm-hmm.
And it's how they both dealt with that and eventually broke free and wrote their own story, and took basically the kingdom back from a
Ah.
horrible mother queen who owns basically everything with, I'm not wording it right, uh, who enforced these toxic rules. So he finally saw it, but it took almost losing her
You're right.
to
Right.
realize there was something better out there and he could forge it with her.
Yeah. I get it. I'm seeing a clear picture, Asha, of going through a series of challenges and realizing that within these challenges you have strengths, and either you discover the strengths by yourself or someone helps you to discover the strengths, and then you engage in the strengths and you realize that you can actually overcome the
Yes,
challenges,
yes.
and it's a better ending than the beginning. I love that.
Yeah, and it's both nature and nurture. So it's
Right.
about the strengths we have within us
Yeah.
and the effects our environment have on us, and how
Mm.
those play off each other and fight sometimes,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
uh, and learning about yourself and how you can perhaps grow past the
Hmm.
challenges life put
Yeah,
upon you, or
yeah.
even your own genetics.
Right.
It's both.
Yeah. And how important is that lesson for you to get across to people through your publications?
I just didn't realize how much people um, got out of it, really. But
Yeah.
knowing now, I
Hmm.
feel like I've really found meaning in my life again. Uh,
Yes.
Knowing that I am sharing things that people didn't actually know before,
Yeah.
and being isolated, I didn't know that other people didn't know this, because I felt like I was entering a new world when I grew up.
Hmm.
Um, but teaching people about tools to use in crisis, like tips, where you can try taking a cold shower. And I share things that are science based, like the cold submerging in cold water triggers the mammalian dive response, which is cold
Mm-hmm.
water re-regulating the automatic functions of your body, your blood pressure, your breathing, your heart rate. So I share those things,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to help other people deal with crisis is incredibly rewarding and meaningful to me. And it helps me feel like I'm
Yeah.
not alone. So it's
Yes.
beneficial both ways.
Yes, it is. And I can testify with the cold shower theory, Asher. It actually works. Can I just share this with you and our
Absolutely.
audience?
Please.
This guy, Tony Robbins, you know his name, right? He's probably
Oh,
one of the most famous motivational speakers on the planet.
it's familiar. I'm so
Yeah.
bad with names
Yeah.
though.
That's all right. That's all right. It's not a fault. It's just where you pay attention to, right? And he says when he gets up in the morning, the only thing that gets his body and his mind working is when he jumps into virtually, literally a pool of cold water.
No.
Can you imagine that? And then
No.
that sets his foundation for the rest of his day. His day takes off because now he can actually tell his brain, we are going south, and there's little or no resistance because that awakening, that shocking awakening, brings all things into perspective, and he retains the ability to decide where he wants to go and how he wants to go there. So yeah, I can understand that theory, and I appreciate you sharing with us as well. So I want to bring up one more
Mhm.
for us, and yeah, do some color commentary for us, Asha, on this one as well.
Yes, The Dragon Knight and the Coveted is book two. It is a little
Mm-hmm.
bit of a standalone, so it can be read separately. This is the
Okay.
story of the liberated slave Elpis
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
her journey learning how to reintroduce her journey of reintroducing herself to society, learning
Yeah.
what healthy relationships are, learning how to adapt, learning even how to wear normal clothes. I hate
Mm-hmm.
using the word normal, but it's just the easiest way.
Yes.
Um, and just learning what normal behavior is, and basically it's all reprogramming,
Mm-hmm.
because she was in a way isolated from education because of,
Yeah.
they only taught her what she needed to do to perform what she needed to perform.
Mm-hmm.
And the knight who's escorting her back to rehabilitation is a source of this education for her, teaches her how to use currency, teaches her what positive physical relationships are, and what it means to fall in love, and
Mm-hmm.
have these things introduced to her in a positive light, where before it was all negative associations.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
coping with physical trauma, and sharing those tools through him on how to deal with the physical aftershocks of being used in a certain way.
Yeah. What a wonderful story. Thank you for sharing, Asha. Thank you so much. So, as we continue, is there another one in the making? How does the future look like as far as your writing is concerned?
I've actually written 10 of these. So
Ah.
yes, I'm delayed publishing because I didn't intend to publish these. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
slowly getting them out and editing. The next book four, is
Yeah.
kind of historically based on the Belgian occupation of the Congo. No one would know this unless
Oh,
they read the author's notes.
right, right.
Yeah, my father was born in Africa, the Belgian Congo,
Okay.
so I grew up
Mm-hmm.
listening to a lot of traumatizing stories.
Stories. Yeah.
Yes, and
Yeah.
getting older and learning more about it, I had somewhat a uncomfortable view of family. And
Mm-hmm.
this book touches on learning, first of all, running away from a village that was
Mm-hmm.
unhealthy, repeating that theme, and
Yeah.
struggling with the idea that her biological family, aka lion shifters, aka representing the Belgians, who were occupying all these other cat territories, struggling with the notion of wanting to see her family, but also knowing that when she goes there, she will never be allowed to leave again because of how they control their
Mm-hmm.
women. They don't like lion. It's all very symbolic, historically kind of tied in and also tied in with trauma. So it is a complicated dance, but the male protagonist helps her escape and is constantly trying to convince her to not go to the lions because he cares about her safety. And it's just about her struggle with wanting to know who she is and her family and knowing that where she's going might not be the best place, very similar to where she just escaped. So it touches on a lot of struggle with family and trauma and being associated with things you just wish you weren't.
Yeah. Asha, I'm listening to the depth of what you're saying, and I'm very encouraged by the fact that you think so much about people's emotions, trauma, and how they can find a way to break away from what may be imprisoning them and see a release somewhere around the corner, face the reality of that release, and have a better and even a beautiful life as a result of that. I see that in your writing, I see that in your foresight and what you just shared. Thank you so much. That it's really beautiful. And the reason why that is so to me is because I think we need to have more writers like yourself, Asha, who will focus on bringing some level of freedom, liberation, and hope to people. And I think you have done that in a really beautiful and engaging manner. Thank you so much.
I mean,
What would,
thank you for
yeah,
helping
go
me
ahead.
have a voice.
Yes, of course. Everybody's voice matters. At some point in time or the other, everybody's voice matters. There are two things that I want to look at, but the first thing I want to ask you, Ash, is what are some of the things that your family and close friends said to you that made you decide, okay, you know what? I'm just going to do it?
They didn't know. Nobody, I kept all of this very separate from my personal life, especially,
Wow.
and I don't mention any names. I don't say, who traumatized me, who abused me. I don't go into
Yeah.
any of
Yeah.
that.
Hmm.
But I keep it very separate. One, because I am not, I'm relatively insecure about who will enjoy these books because they are intense. They talk
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
touch on very difficult. They are explicit.
Hmm.
They're tough to read.
Hmm.
As much as I try to use humor to lighten them, but as I got more into publishing, I eventually let them know, and they support it. Um, it's just very two separate worlds that I felt like needed to be. I felt like if I had the people closest to me read these
Hmm.
things about me, I might subconsciously maybe censor myself.
Yeah.
It's just freeing to kind of separate those two worlds.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I get it. Yeah, I get it now. I can see it. Thank you for clearing up that. Appreciate that. And we appreciate you. Now,
Thank
Asha, there's about roughly 8 billion people in the world. That's the population roughly of the world.
you. Yeah.
And you have found a way to ignite some kind of passion in people, because when they read and they take the time to read, because as you say, the reading is challenging, it's quite raw, but at the end of the day, they see the hope, they see the vision of realities that could lead them to a place of being better, and
Yeah.
having a more fruitful and productive life.
And
How
feeling
do you
better.
feel? Yes. And how do you feel that you could be considered as someone who has created a new niche, and maybe could be considered as a leader, even to the extent where your community gets not just bigger, but more impactful, and touch and move more lives?
It is occasionally difficult to shoulder some
Uh-huh.
labels,
Yeah.
especially when someone uses words like "you're a hero" or
Hmm.
um, because this is very much me struggling to find meaning and restart my life with disabilities and major
Yeah.
depression.
Yeah.
Um, I am happy though to be a voice. After all this therapy, I'm finally comfortable speaking openly about these things. And I am happy to hopefully normalize some of these fears people have about speaking up about these topics, um, and letting them be able to finally hear it from someone.
Hmm.
Because shouldering some of these alone, even certain physical dysfunctions that people just don't talk about, um, helps them feel not alone, helps them feel connected. And I feel a sense of purpose, and that
Hmm.
helps me cope with my life. And
Yeah.
I am glad to, I guess, be of service in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's wonderful because I think for me personally, as a life coach, I have seen instances where I have met people, and a couple of my clients would tell me all they need to get is for their story to be understood and appreciated. And sometimes when it's really tough for you see it as being tough for other people. But one of the reasons why I use the population of the world as an example is because there's no way, whatever you have been through, that you alone on this planet have been through that. Others have been through as well, and you have discovered that. And so it is important for us to, when we make certain discoveries about life and ourselves, and it brings us some empowerment and personal development, it's wonderful to share it. And again, I commend you for doing it in the manner that you have done. You have seen the growth, and you have seen the improvement in your life with the therapy and so on. And you are stronger now that you can take yourself to the next level. And who knows who you could elevate as a result of that as well. What are your thoughts?
I it's a big question. And occasionally when I
Yes, it
get
is.
big questions, my brain starts to shut down and go into panic mode. But I I think that it is as shocking to me as the whole Me Too movement, realizing that that the world is bigger than I thought it was. And that's
Okay.
the side effect of isolation. So seeing this
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
degree
Yeah.
of people, um, it does give me hope that maybe I've started a ripple that will eventually spread, whether it's people finding out about
Mm-hmm.
me or someone
Yes.
else being inspired to write something similar. I'm hoping that these tools will spread and help people overcome their own challenges.
Yeah. Wonderful. So, Asha, we have come to the end virtually of this wonderful and engaging episode entitled Raw Fantasy Romance Fiction. And I've put some information up on the screen there. I just need you to tell people which one they should try if they need to make contact with you to hear more about your story and how they can get copies of your publications.
My book is available on Kindle Unlimited, Amazon, and Barnes and Noble. My unpublished ones are free to read on Inca. I promised my readers that they would remain
Mhm.
free until they're published. I try to get them free copies, anyways. And I have a very easy website, just my name, ashanyr.com. I'm on
Mhm.
Instagram, X, Twitter. And just Googling Asha Nyr will get you point you in a lot of different directions. So that's how you can contact. You can anyone's welcome to email me through my website if they have any questions. But yeah, if they want to start with book one, good luck. It's intense. Book two is a little bit more gentle, so they can also start that if they need a safer introduction to this
Yeah.
topic.
Okay. All right. There you have it, folks. And Asha, you do have an audience. And I know that there are others who would see this publication when we put it out later on all the social media platforms. Asha Nyr, uh, Nia, sorry, that's her last name. Raw fantasy romance fiction. She has been a very raw and engaging guest, and we encourage you to read for enlightenment, read for information, read for knowledge. Check out Asha's publication as well. So, until next time, this is Andy of Andy's Personal Development on Let's Just Read, together with my guest, Asha Nia, saying bye for now. Godspeed, God
Bye.
bless,
Have a good day.
namaste.
There.
Okay.